Welcome to Framework. This is John, one of the hosts of Framework, and with me, as always, is the other host of Framework, Al. How are you today, Al?
I am good, man. We're here to talk about one of my favorite movies ever.
Oh, good.
Most scarring movies. Like, it really just did a freaking number on me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And that movie, of course, is The Shining, the Stanley Kubrick, Jack Nicholson adaptation of the Stephen King novel. Joining us today is Bowie Dunwoody. How are you today, Bowie?
I'm good. I do have a bit of a cold, so I sound not like myself, but it's fine. We're going to chug through.
I think you sound relatively like yourself right now.
Okay, great.
So, I think this is one of the most famous movies of all time. We probably don't need to do too much in the way of introducing this one. It's the Haunted Hotel movie about Jack Nicholson going crazy and attacking his family. It's based on another very popular source material book, the Stephen King version of The Shining. There is differences between them. I'm sure we'll discuss that at some point. But y'all know what this is. It's The Shining. It's The Shining. So
Stephen King famously being one of the few detractors of the film version.
Craziest thing in the world.
He does not like the changes that were made
Oh no,
to it.
he hated it. There was a phone call between them where he just ended up hanging up on Kubrick and like completely saying, "This is the worst thing that's ever happened. Don't do it."
The nature of that phone call, or at least the apocryphal kind of version that I've heard, and I've heard this like from Kubrick supporters and King supporters, that the story is that Kubrick would call Stephen King during production, which took a year, by the way. They were shooting this thing a year. Can you imagine how insane that must have gotten? He would call him in the middle of the night and just talk his ear off about death and the afterlife and stuff like that. And the way it's presented always is that King believes in the afterlife and God and religion, and Kubrick explicitly does not. That he is an atheist and does not really believe in metaphysical any of that kind of thing. I've seen versions of this call or this debate between them that kind of favor one or the other, but it is fun to imagine these two having uncomfortable conversations about death and hell in the middle of the night while he's making this thing.
I'm trying to think, like, is this the only Kubrick movie with like supernatural elements to it? I mean, 2001, I suppose, is.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, it's certainly sci-fi to the point of supernatural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it crosses that line.
Yeah, by the
For
end.
sure. For sure. Yes.
I mean, it's definitely not his general vibe. Even the most messed up things he did, Clockwork Orange, probably. Explicitly not that. Yeah.
And yet he made one of the like most influential, most seminal ghost stories ever put to film.
Yeah. And I'll go you one for this is the thing for me. Like, I'm not a big Kubrick fan. Like, I mean, I don't think he sucks or anything. I think, he's obviously great. His movies are very strong. None of them have resonated for me personally in a way that I felt like obsessed with them and had to rewatch them, except The Shining.
Same.
Which is like my favorite movie of all time. I mean, I say that like it's kind of a dumb conversation, favorite movie of all time, but this is sort of the one I go to because it's just a fun answer and it's sort of representative. I feel
it does certainly like it stands head and shoulders above the rest of his filmography for me, like on a personal level, because, well, I mean, it is his best movie. I think it's like that's a fair opinion to have on the merits, but also like I saw The Shining in exactly like the worst way of seeing a movie that is also the perfect way of seeing The Shining, which was that I was probably 9 or 10 years old, maybe. And like one of the first times that I built up the courage to sneak out of bed after I had been put to sleep on a Friday night and creep out to the upstairs room where we had a little 24-inch box TV that didn't get cable. It only got 4 channels. And I just turned it on the volume really low so my parents downstairs wouldn't hear it. And I just like, let's see what's on TV late at night. And then I turned on halfway through The Shining on cable TV, edited, like the Room 237 is like edited out. But all the, crazy bartender stuff, the ghost stuff, the murdering your family stuff is all there. And I'm just sitting there wide-eyed going, oh my God, is this what happens to TV like after 10 o'clock? Is it just this becomes this whirlwind of sinister madness?
I actually have a very similar story, which is that I was like probably 6 or 7 years old, and this was on HBO all the time. Now, I did not watch it like through, even from the middle on. It was just like my uncle was watching me, and I saw like 15 minutes in the middle, which happened to include the twins, the kids on the tricycle, running down the halls in the Steadicam, one of the most incredible shots in film history, and sees the two little girls at the end of the hallway. And then it cuts, like, has these flash cuts to their bloody corpses. And it's just one of those things that sticks with you for the rest of your childhood, and you become kind of low-key fascinated by and just have to know what's going on. And that's about when I start to become cognizant of Stephen King in general. I think my mom had some books of his, and there's the covers of, which strike you as a child. You're like, oh my God, what's this about? This seems illicit. This seems like I shouldn't know about it. So it became a fascination. And then, that led to me being a very big King guy. And
John, I'm guessing you and I, we've never talked about this explicitly, but went through a very similar like Stephen King phase at the same like time of our lives, most likely.
Sounds like yeah. I mean, we've talked about this guy a few times before. Yeah, I mean, we got deep into Dark Tower stuff at one point. I'm still kind of there though. I never really
I still like him.
Go. Yeah.
But Bowie, where are you on Stephen King? Did you have the teenage phase like we did, where you just
I did have a phase, but I was younger. Like a similar story, 8 or 9. But my mom let me watch the movie. She was very big on like, I'm not gonna censor anything from you. So she loved it, and she let me watch it. And I read it also when I was like 10 maybe. So I went through a phase from like 8 to like 13 is when my Stephen King phase was. So I was a little young, I think.
I mean, I thought I was young too when I got into King, and it's been my experience that almost everybody who gets into King kind of does it when they're a young teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was probably 11 or 12 when I first started reading it, but I distinctly remember feeling like, okay, these are adult books.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is not just like, oh, okay, in the library or school, every book was marked with a reading grade level, like reading level. Like, I'm not just going like from the 6th grade book to the 8th grade books. Like, this is
an adult book.
Yeah, this
not
is
for
where
me.
the nasty stuff happens.
They're kind of fantastic gateway books to literature, to adult books. I mean, he obviously, like, his particular talents as a writer is that his stuff is so conversational and relatable that that the reading level is not it's high school. It's not it's nothing particularly advanced about him, and that's sort of the key to his appeal. But he's so good at character and story and just finding these incredible hooks. And The Shining is, I mean, if not his best hook among them, this is is this the best haunted house story anyone's ever told? I mean, it's got to be in consideration.
I mean, I don't know if it's the story itself is the best ghost story ever, but the filmed version is like the best filmed version of a ghost story, and for my money.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know if it's the best like haunted house story there is out there, but the way that they did it and how absolutely captivating that film is, like, I can't think of another film that is more correct when it comes to haunted house stories than The Shining.
Yeah, and the thing is, like I was saying, I'm much more of a Stephen King guy than a Stanley Kubrick guy, and I'm like, Kubrick wins. Kubrick is the correct one in this argument.
Yeah,
he did the better version of The Shining, I think, and I really like the book. I think the book is terrific.
Same.
But
the book is really good.
Yeah,
it seems obvious to me from a distance of analyzing somebody I've never met that King's like distaste for the movie is really sharpened by it's not just that he doesn't like the changes, but he resents that they made the changes he doesn't like, and it was really freaking good anyway. Like,
yeah. It seems like, because he's not had a problem with some terrible versions of his stuff.
Right.
He is even like outright, endorsed and publicly liked shit movies that have been made of his things because his friends made them. That happened with a lot of the Mick Garris ones. It happened with his version of The Shining, as a matter of fact. The TV adaptation with Steven Weber, which is just objectively a kind of a bad thing, but it follows the book closer. So it, and well, Stephen King wrote it too. He wrote the teleplay for it.
Right.
But yeah, that is actually a very interesting sort of filmed object in that it really demonstrates how good the movie is. Really shows you how successful the film is at capturing what's scary about the idea, what's interesting about the characters, because the TV one is so literal in its adaptation and so ham-fisted in a lot of its themes and dialogue and characterizations.
Well, when Jack goes crazy, he uses a giant croquet mallet to chase his family around, as opposed to an axe. Like that
Objectively
I think
less
just,
scary.
Exactly. It's such a clear downgrade, like just a worse choice in such clear terms. There, I feel like that just tells you what you need to know about the two adaptations.
Yeah, or the hedge animals instead of the maze. You know, they're terrible 1990s television CGI hedge animals versus a maze. You know, like that is scary and you get lost in it.
90s CGI was just. It could. I mean, if you're not James Cameron, it was tough going, or Spielberg, I suppose. You know.
Yeah, we accepted some bad shit
on TV budgets, especially. The thing is, I remember us being kind of impressed with it at the time. Impressed with ourselves for like, look what we can do, and not like it took us a little while to be like, oh yeah, but it doesn't actually look good. It's recognizable as the thing you were trying to draw on the computer, but anyway. So let's go back to the Kubrick version here, because like what does it do? We keep saying how great it is. Like I would say, for my money, the two things that it does better than any other movie I can think of is, and especially as far as ghost stories go, one is capturing just the feeling of genuine evil that pervades the Overlook Hotel. Because sometimes there's ghost stories that are sort of like going for spooky or like creepy, just like atmosphere, like it's dark and you don't really know what's around the corner. But you know, I complained in another recent one of these podcasts about how saying like I don't really like the friendly ghost movies that like you get from Guillermo del Toro, and sometimes like the mysteriousness of the haunting can also come off as sort of benign, or like but is this thing really like wanting to hurt you? And there is really no question the Overlook does want to hurt these people. It's got a will, and it is malevolent, and I don't know exactly how he gets that across, but man, it came through the 24-inch TV and the commercial breaks in 1992.
I think it's honestly like one of the things that gets you there is seeing the tactics that it takes with the different family members. I mean, it kind of just leaves Wendy, just leaves her alone until the end when things are in, overdrive. But it takes, it goes after Danny in a very different way than it goes after Jack. And once you've seen the way it's going after Danny, honestly, it's mostly even kind of just implied. You don't actually see too many attacks on Danny in the film. That scene with Scatman Crothers goes a very long way in establishing that. But then to see the sort of the seduction of Nicholson in this film, that kind of happens slowly and deliberately and ramps up as it goes. I think you can see
the way it's turning him against his family, that it's like, it's talking shit on his family behind their back to him to really like sharpen his resentment toward them. That, you said it's a slow start. Is this a slow paced movie?
Oh, I don't think so.
I imagine for people that have never seen it before, they're probably like, there's a lot of time spent on like spooky shots of the outside with loud music and things like that. That's like, why are we spending our time on this? But then once it ramps up, everyone's like, oh, I realize why we spent our time taking those slow shots in the beginning. Like they drive for like 4 minutes, which like to me adds suspense and is like, oh yes, this is so good. But I imagine to the person who had never seen it probably being like, why are they driving for so long?
Well, it underlines how isolated they're going to be, because the isolation, the emptiness of it. I mean, that's a like kind of tough thing that this movie handles with aplomb, is how small the cast is. There's not, you can't really rack up a real body count in this movie because there's only 4 characters of any note. and two of them are going to live, and one of them is the bad guy. So like he can only kill one person throughout the whole movie, and that in lesser hands, that could be a problem. That this earlier scenes are like, well, I know they're not going to kill the kid 40 minutes into this movie, so
Yeah.
following this kid around on a strike, like what what am I scared of? But the atmosphere there is laid so early and so thick. That's, I mean, part of the King's problem with this movie too is that he thinks that the bad change is that Jack Nicholson comes off as insane from the start, and
Yeah.
I do think that and not somebody who like slowly is driven mad by the this malevolent spirits or whatever, but I like that there's no pretense that this is a happy family, like that things are not going to be terrible once they go to this hotel. like the movie, you can sort of see the characters don't even believe that this is going to be a good thing for them. Like Wendy, does not buy it, but she's sort of in, I don't know if it's Stockholm syndrome, but just, I guess it's just battered wife syndrome of trying to go along to get along.
Yeah, everything seems on the face to be a horrible idea. Even just that's like when he comes in. I mean, King's thing is like he just played Randall McMurphy in Cuckoo's Nest. The audience thinks he's crazy. That that's the association they have with him. He doesn't. That's not right. Debatable. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't change anything about this performance, but I don't think he comes off crazy. I just think he's sort of bitter and snide and resentful. I think
right. Didn't he like just get fired from his job, and like he had an affair maybe and hurt his son, and like his wife doesn't trust him? Like, of course he's not happy and ready to spend a whole winter in a hotel together. Like, of course he's upset and bitter and angry. Like, I don't know. I don't see him as crazy at all. I see him as a jaded white man.
Yeah, he's an asshole. And I think that some of this has got to be that I have read the book, and I am taking kind of the backstory there and applying it. I mean, it's implied here. The he definitely abused his child in the movie. That's that
part's not
scene.
implied.
Yeah.
The rest of it kind of is. They never talk about affairs, but you can certainly see in Nicholson's performance that he thinks that he should not have settled on this woman that he looks down on.
Yeah. I think that's an incredible. I think the casting of Shelley Duvall in this is so genius. Opposite Jack Nicholson, that they have anti-chemistry. That they're so clearly an unhappy couple. That that he resents her.
It's hard to imagine
she's
them
scared of him.
ever loving each other and being like, let's get together and have sex and have a baby. Like, I can't imagine that ever happening between the two of them.
Right. It feels like a shotgun wedding situation.
Yeah, the backstory in the book, right? Do I have this right, or am I filling in some of this myself? Is that he was like, or she was a student of his that he got pregnant, basically.
Oh.
And then,
I don't recall that.
I don't remember that either.
She's like a cheerleader type. She's a different character in the book, I think.
He gets with a student for sure in the book. I don't know if
maybe that's where I pulled it from.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think that fits the what happened here and how he like sort of ended up with her when he feels like he shouldn't have. Or that she trapped him.
Yeah, there's this clear resentment just pouring out of him.
Anti-chemistry is a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, anti-chemistry is a great way of putting it. And I wonder how much of this there was in the family that was there before them, like whether they were a happy family or not.
Oh, the Grady's?
Yeah, because I was thinking about this earlier when you were both talking about the ghost story, about there's a little bit of, I'm sad for these people because they were just people that the Overlook also corrupted, and now they live in this hotel. Well, not live, they're dead, but now they're dead in this hotel where they reside in this hotel where they like corrupt other people and hurt other people. And some of them are children, right? Like the twins are children, but they exist to make Danny feel terrified. And that makes me really sad for them because they were probably just kids that had the same thing happen to them.
Oh yeah. Well, there's an inherent sort of creepiness in the premise of the ghost. In anything. If you really get into it, it is trapped souls. It's people who cannot move on, and are trapped in some form of purgatory or limbo, and if it's a place as creepy and upsetting as the Overlook, that is some kind of version of hell that is undeserved by anyone really, and that is just sort of inherently upsetting about the ghost story. And when you really kind of when you really involve children in it.
Yeah. Just bring in children. It's
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah, there's always sadness in the ghost, and that's certainly how the Overlook functions. Like, and you also get the sense that they're not really that they're sort of a collective consciousness or a collective will that is not their own that drives the hotel proper.
Yeah, you certainly don't get a feeling that like what we see the ghost Grady, that we're getting what his real personality was like. Like he has become a mouthpiece for the Overlook at that point.
Yeah. I wonder like why the hotel is still looking for like a master, because that's what it feels like it's doing when it takes Jack and like puts Jack in that photo and like makes him the person who has always been there and will always be there. And I wonder why the hotel didn't accept Grady into that role but is accepting Jack into that role.
I looked at that it's looking for a servant more than a master,
sure.
and that it did accept Grady into that role, but it replaces them. That he fades into the background, and Jack will eventually move to the background of that photo. Yeah,
he's the waiter. He's the eternal waiter of the Gold Room now, Grady. And it'll just keep eating.
Well, actually, maybe this is also bringing stuff from the book too, but I think. If it wants a master, it wants Danny to be that because he's got the shine, and that's what it's interested in. That will somehow amp up its power or whatever in some way that it wants his ability specifically.
Yeah, Jack's a means to an end.
It definitely holds on to Danny. Like I don't know if we're going to talk about it, but like holds on to him throughout Doctor Sleep as well. Like that poor kid is just tormented by this hotel from age 5 until we finish his story.
Yeah. Have you read that one or seen that one?
I have not read or seen that one. I've heard good things about the I've heard good things about the movie adaptation.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe its own episode like a year from now or something.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's very interesting. Very interesting,
just,
though.
Yeah, but we can't bring other movies into this,
No,
really.
no,
we have plenty with this one.
It is a compelling sequel to The Shining, if such a, which you would think would be an impossible thing. And but it is.
I would. That's why I never bothered with it. As I was not quite actively resentful, but antipathetic to the premise. So that sequel to Shining, no thanks.
The other part of that is it's a movie I would never recommend to people with children.
Yeah,
it's very hardcore and almost in a Hereditary-esque way. It's a rough one. Yeah, small kids. That's gonna be tough. But
The Shining's not easy.
Shining is also
on the parental
pretty
mind.
tough.
I found that was a new thing. Like the most recent time I watched it, it was the first time I had done it with a kid, and the whole idea of hurting your child like struck me in a way that obviously it didn't when I was 11.
Well, that is the terrifying idea. Like, I mean, that's the thing about this story that really, like, more than anything else, more than the ghosts, is probably like the knife, that goes for the heart the most is the parental abuse stuff, which, when you're a kid and you're excited about ghosts and more immediate kind of, elevator blood, blowjob dog, those sort of things pop out up front. But yeah, like the idea of hurting your own kids, or being in such a place. I think that addiction obviously plays a big part of this, especially in the book. The book is so much about addiction. It's a huge addiction story. It's kind of crazy. He wrote it before the worst of his addiction problems, actually. But because it's so insightful about AA and recovery and higher power and all that shit. But, and I think probably
it's a good book about writing. That King likes that as a topic, and maybe never did it better than in The Shining, where it's sort of filtered through the fiction more than he's written some nonfiction books about. Literally one book called On Writing, but yeah, it's got these different like layers to it, I guess, and maybe that's part of what King was so resentful about is that I think he like really plumbed something himself, I bet, to put all the addiction stuff and this portrait of
Yep.
an abusive father that is really like convincing and compelling and somewhat sympathetic, but not like, you know, I don't think it's absolving him. I mean, it's been a long time since I read the book of that, but I think maybe that was like really hard for King to pull out of himself, and then Kubrick kind of brushed some of that aside. And
Yeah.
yeah, but
He's
you know,
just an asshole. Yeah.
blowjob dogs and axes is where this movie's going to live.
Yeah,
you know,
that's always felt like the thing at the core of their schism to me. Like the treatment of the Jack Torrance character.
Yeah.
One of King's best characters in many regards, you know, certainly one of the most personal, certainly relatable in this kind of universal way, but so specifically Stephen King in a lot of his addiction and writing, and he's teaching, and he's a young father at that point. You know, he's got this quote about you know, the kids is okay, I wrote it down here. As a young father of 2 children, I was horrified by my occasional feelings of real antagonism towards them. Won't you ever stop? Won't you ever go to bed? And time has given me the idea that probably there are a lot of young fathers and young mothers who both feel very angry and have angry feelings towards their children. So when I wrote this book, I wrote a lot of that down and tried to get it out of my system, but it was also a confession.
Yeah.
And yes, there are times I felt angry towards my children and have even felt as though I could hurt them. So yeah, this is personal, deep stuff.
Oof.
Yeah. This is him like plumbing the darkest inside part of himself, which was pretty dark, you know, especially in these when he's got alcohol problems and
Yeah.
you know, and he's not. This is before he's really successful when he's writing this, you know. So this is you know, the rawest King gets in many ways. And then yes, the Kubrick version of this character is just like, he's just an asshole.
Yeah, it flattens that out into just a villain.
he's a sort of a lazy guy who doesn't respect his family, and he's kind of a dick about it. And he doesn't really, you know, he just bitches. He just bitches a lot and doesn't want to take responsibility. And he's a pure villain. Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
Really, you know, they say a lot of other things, but I think that's the thing.
And I think a big part of the schism is that Jack is just a failed writer in the movie, and in the book he's genuinely trying to write something and like has all these great thoughts about what to write, but in the movie he's just like, I think he blames his family for his failing writing career and losing his job, and like there's no nuance there that exists in the book. And I can see why. Even though I don't think he's crazy from the get-go, I see why King was like, I don't like this guy. I don't like the way you're portraying him. He's not who I wrote. So I get that.
Yeah, the way that King articulates the criticism is that he doesn't like that Nicholson comes off as crazy from the start. But I think what John brushed up against a minute ago was that part of it's also just that he comes off as an asshole from the start.
Yeah.
Like that he's a
totally
dick. And I think that maybe rubs King more wrong than the other thing.
And maybe he's right in the sense that the story would have been far more compelling if he had been a really nice, loving father from the beginning. But I can't imagine it being told that way, having seen it the way it is told now, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like at the end of the day, the argument can be made that the King version of Jack is the more complex version. But
there's a tragic dimension to his version of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's operatic in that way. But I mean, Nicholson is operatic in the other way, you know, in the huge way, in the I will remember this scene for the rest of my life kind of way. And also, I think the older I get, the more I think that the Nicholson version that's what people are in a lot of cases.
Sure.
I think that the piece of shit version of this guy, it's at least as true as the complex one.
Totally.
You know?
I mean, this man exists out there. You know, I'm not saying that at all, but the scene that I will remember for the rest of my life is the walking up the stairs scene when he's like, I'm gonna bash your fucking brains in. That is, to me, the most, like, I know that the Here's Johnny is the most quoted one, but that scene where he's walking up the stairs and she has the baseball bat is the, like, pinnacle of that movie. It is so scary and so intense, and so good. It's just so good.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, here's Johnny to me is like not even the good part. I don't think I
No.
even like that.
I don't
but
like it either.
his delivery of "love of my life" on the
Yes,
stairs,
so good.
that's the peak of the performance to me.
Oh, oh
Yeah,
wow.
all his scenes with Duvall are just outrageous. Like they're so incredible. Like is that scene where he's just like, "Oh yeah, if I just left, I could just write my ticket back in Boulder, couldn't I, Wendy?"
Right.
All that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what would happen to me if I were to Welsh on my responsibility? All that kind of unexamined toxic masculinity before that was even a term stuff. It's so cool. It's so cool, maybe not the word, but it's so
Right.
it's so like meaty.
Well,
It can really,
yeah,
oh god, it's
well rendered.
I feel like
articulate.
we can't talk about this movie without talking about poor Shelley Duvall and the way that she was treated by Kubrick. Like she
Like everyone.
was,
Yeah.
I mean, by everyone. She was so abused and hurt by those people. Like he made her do that "love of my life" scene over and over and over and over again because he kept telling her that she wasn't doing enough. And I, like, as a person who has been an actor, can't imagine the emotional toll it must have taken to do that scene like 100 times and being told that it wasn't good enough. Oh, that poor woman went through so much with that movie.
The stories are pretty horrible, and
Yeah.
the really horrible thing about it is like it worked. Like,
Right, that's the worst
you
part.
you hate to admit, like, because it can't be the only way to have gotten there.
Yeah.
Like I'm not approving of of but yeah.
Exhibit A for the efficacy of onset abuse.
Yeah, unfortunately.
No, John.
But no, it's the best performance of being scared in the history of cinema.
Yes,
In my
I
opinion.
mean you're not wrong, but
Because she's terrified, probably because she's
Yeah.
actually frightened, and at the end of her her last wit, this film is unique in
The way she
also
waves
that-
the bat is just
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it's
so
it's
good.
such a like the best horror movie performance ever. Just frightened to the point of like your nerve endings aren't working. Like
Mhm.
you're losing muscle control almost. Like incredible.
She's, and it's not just her being worn down though. This is a wonderful performance in every regard. You know what I really love in this is that she is, where she is, kind of carrying water for him with the doctor and all that stuff. She hasn't really admitted to herself what's going on. Like it is not like she's not fully articulated what a problem her husband is.
Mm.
Until they get there and she kind of sees him with the gloves off. I think the first scene is when he,
When she interrupts him.
yeah, she
well,
interrupts him.
sort-
Writing.
That's
Sort of.
his framing of it. He's not actually doing anything.
He's just-
But he
is
could
it-
have been.
Is
He's
that
just
when
angry.
he's throwing the ball, or
I
just
think
when
it's
he's
right-
like
I think it's
sitting
before
there?
that. Yeah, he's just
She
he's
brings
just
him
sitting at the
food and-
typewriter.
yeah, he's typing, but it's as we find out, he's just
Yeah, he's
pissed
just
off because he's
typing.
blocked. Yeah.
Yeah.
She comes in to have a conversation. And she's like, "I hear there's going to be a snowstorm." He's like, "What do you want me to do about it?" It's just,
What a asshole.
yeah,
And I
bad
think
But
guy.
also, it does seem like though. I mean, if you're married to a writer, like you should have to have like some sense of that, of the you don't interrupt the workflow. Like, I mean,
Well,
not
he's
just
not
the writers,
really a
but
writer in the movie.
That's,
Right,
yeah,
in
that's
the
the
movie.
thing.
He's not really a writer, and I
Yeah,
think the
they're
turning point.
mismatched.
The turning point for her is when I think is when she finds all the pages, and it's
Oh, God.
just like it's just the same thing over and over again, and she realizes like, oh, he's gone fucking crazy. Like this isn't
Yeah.
normal Jack being an asshole, which I thought was
Mm.
what we were dealing with, but he has gone like absolutely insane and is going to hurt my kid,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, that's the bat scene. That's I mean that's beginning of Act 3.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful performance. People hated it at the time. People made fun of it. It was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Actress.
I didn't know that.
It's
Oh,
offensive. It is horrible. And
That's
these
insane.
assholes, they rescinded the award in 2022. The nomination for Shelley Duvall. They did it at the same time they backed off of Bruce Willis because of his problems. This happened this year. These assholes, and they were just like, "Oh well, it wasn't her fault because Kubrick abused her on the set." You know, they said this in 2022. Fuck these people.
Oh,
But
great!
she
I can
was
go
so
back to
good.
enjoying the
What?
Razzies.
It's a
Oh my
legendary
God.
all-timer performance. No one's
It
ever
is.
been more effectively frightened on screen. It is
But
amazing.
yeah.
I love this performance. I love this characterization. I
I
think this
agree.
version of the character works so much better than the book version that King prefers. King calls this Wendy, the Shelley Duvall one, a sexist caricature. Calls her a doormat, and I think she's way more dimensional than his Wendy.
His Wendy is just a Mary Sue that
Yes,
like sits around doing nothing. What?
it's a character he has no
I
interest
disagree.
in. Yeah,
Right.
like he cares about Danny and Jack. And to be fair, Kubrick seems to only care about Jack.
Yeah.
That's kind of true. But
But man,
I don't know if I would quibble with doormat. That's certainly part of the characterization.
that's what's scary.
But,
That's what's frightening is
yeah.
that people aren't ideal. You know, like that people are not necessarily the best version of themselves all the time.
Mhm.
Certainly not in extreme situations. You know,
Yeah,
I could
there
be
is something
Wendy in the Shining easily.
right. That's
Yeah.
what's so scary, especially about that third act, is having a heroine that is not really rising to the occasion. I mean, she kind of does, I guess, but just the all the stuff we're talking about with the performance, like it doesn't feel like she's really finding a reserve in her strength, and that's like
Yeah.
become
if-
kind of de rigueur as part of like latter like post 1980s horror that is sort of like claimed that the final girl is actually like sort of a
resourceful. You know,
yeah
she's-
feminist
She
portrait of
earns the right to
strength in some way.
survive or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mhm.
And Wendy's not that. She's not.
Well,
I mean,
She's not the Laurie Strode
disagree.
that's dismembering Michael Myers in
sure.
a trilogy of movies this last decade.
I
thing
do
is-
think she shows up and is like, I'm gonna take care of my kid and make sure my kid lives.
He
which
does.
which I think is a little bit of that resourcefulness. And I also think that of course she was a doormat. She was in an abusive relationship. What else was she gonna do? She had no money, had no job, had nowhere to go.
There's a
and
kid. There's a kid. A weird
has
kid.
a kid, has
Yeah.
a weird fucking kid. And I think that she really does show up and say, like, I'm gonna take care of my kid and I'm gonna get us out of here.
Yeah, if you look at the facts of what she actually does in the story, she is
Yeah.
proactive and successful. Yeah. Like,
But the performance is pitched a different way. That there's not a big
Yeah.
rah moment, even when
Mhm.
she does knock him out with a bat and lock him up, which is you look at that on paper and it's like, oh yeah, she beat the big bad guy, and yet it feels like
Yep.
like we were talking about how it feels like she barely has motor control in that
Yeah.
scene.
and that's so scary. That's so effectively frightening.
And it's so, in my opinion, quite realistic. That's how I would
Oh, yeah.
be
Yeah.
in that
Absolutely.
situation, right?
Oh yeah.
I feel like that was the thing too when I was a kid and just turned it on randomly. I don't know that I had seen scary movies before, but I don't know if I'd ever seen people look that authentically terrified and like I think it did like flip a switch and be like, yeah, if I was in like a monster movie, maybe I wouldn't even be able to fight back. But she kind of does on paper, but it feels like she's just
This is
wilting
great.
the entire time.
That is not, I think, something that you would articulate necessarily after watching The Shining, but I think that it hits you. I think that there's a visceral reaction to Shelley Duvall in this film that is, what if I'm just scared when this shit happens?
Yeah.
What if that is how I react to this? And I think that is a universal thing. Like it has to be. No one's ever been in an experience as extreme as The Shining, really. So, yes, seems like a very natural way to respond to this. It's amazing that she does as well as she does. She gets the kid out the window at the end.
She does.
I love this characterization. She should have won an Oscar for this, in my opinion. It's one of my favorite screen performances. Both of them,
Yes.
really. Yeah.
Yeah, both of
Of
them
course.
are fantastic performances.
Of course, in the book, she does have a little bit of help. That doesn't happen in the movie.
Halloran
Dick
is more active too. in
Dick
the
just
book.
dies. he shows up to the hotel and then dies. His whole story.
Man, what that is also just like the most effective rug pull that a movie's
Yeah.
ever pulled off.
Yeah.
It's just like, holy shit, what?
Mhm.
I hadn't even seen the setup of that character.
Yeah.
Because I had coming halfway through and just seen him like going to the airport and whatnot. But I was also so desperate for anybody to help them,
Yeah.
like get something in there, and it just immediately. I mean that is like it's very Kubrick and it's cruelty to the point of being kind of like blackly funny. that
Yeah.
how
Yes.
abrupt it is.
Yep.
I kind of like that he has no plan when he gets there. Like he's
Yeah.
got the mental scream from Danny from across the country, and he's like, I gotta do it. I gotta go and see, I gotta go help. And then he gets there, he's like, hello.
Hello? Anybody here?
No
It
real
almost
plan.
it does feel like he kind of forgot that it's a haunted house, that he knew that.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah,
I mean,
just like, it looks bad.
yeah. But he does, for as immediately as he's taken out, like he does accomplish something to the story in that he brings the snowcat up there that allows them to actually like survive
Yeah.
and escape.
That is his heroism.
But
Yes.
his only help to the plot was that he left his snowcat and they could get away. That's it.
In the book, he is like
Vital.
straight up an active hero, and he survives.
Yeah, in the book,
Like,
he
he's-
like because Stephen King likes men,
yeah.
and he comes and saves them.
Is he? I think he's come up against the criticism of being a magical Negro character, and it's interesting because he's definitely more fully formed as a
Both those
character
words, I guess,
in the book.
Like,
Right, but it's a trope. It is a trope, and King has more than a few in his books. There's some very significant ones.
yeah, that's true. Wouldn't be the first
yeah.
one I would reach for in the King
Green Mile is
bibliography.
the
Yeah.
extreme one.
Well, and The Stand.
The Stand as well. Yes.
Yeah, those I would start with those two.
But he's kind of on the continuum. I think that between the two characterizations, it feels a little more pronounced, maybe. Because he's definitely more of an active, like, person with an identity in the book. And in the movie, he is a plot function in a lot of ways. He is exposition, and then he brings the snowcat at the end and dies.
Right. But he doesn't. I guess in the movie, though, I don't know. It just Kubrick fills in like just enough. Just oddness with like just the set dressing of his Florida apartment.
Yes,
that
the
he doesn't
naked
feel
women. Oh my god, it's
Yeah.
so good.
It doesn't occur to me to like view him as like a kindly. I guess he is a kindly mentor to Danny at some stakes, but he feels like, oh, okay, he's kind of a real weird person. A little bit of an oddball, but I don't know. Like it doesn't hit me as the sort of like I don't know the noble, benevolent, saintly figure. He doesn't strike me as saintly. I guess that's.
I mean, he is.
the
If you look at
Scatman
what he
Crothers
does.
version.
But it is such
he
a good
does.
performance. Scatman Crothers is unbelievably great in it,
Yeah, he's
and
great.
that goes a long way. Great character in the King continuity. He appears in a lot of King books, actually. Well, a few. He's in It.
Yeah, he's sort of mentioned. He doesn't like do a lot in other books, but it is somebody
Dr.
King,
Sleep, of course.
King returns to. Yeah. So one of the other things that I think this movie does incredibly well, like as a ghost story, is that a lot has been made of this over time, like all the stuff that the obsessiveness of the Kubrick put into the set dressing and to just the layout of the hotel, how it doesn't really make sense, and just the feeling of like illogic to the haunting.
Yeah.
That you always have a sense that this thing has its own kind of rules or limitations it's working around, but they are never exposited to us in the audience, really. And so we never quite we can't quite grasp what the hotel wants, other than it wants Danny.
Or just souls, or like it's. I mean, the book is gets into this more. Like it tells you exactly what. I mean, it's almost like a character with a personality and objectives in the book, and that is something I think is improved on by being more alien in the movie. I think not knowing explicitly what's going on with the hotel or what is driving it is to its benefit. There is one thing, Blowjob Dog is a great example of this, actually. In the movie, it is one shot, and it is just this incredibly inexplicable thing that is jarring and unsettling, and you're just like, what am I even seeing here? In the book, you get the whole backstory on Blowjob Dog, what he wants, what he's doing, why he's a dog. And I think both are kind of effective, but the Kubrick one is the more effective, I would say. It is inscrutable. It is alien, and that is alarming.
But it lands just on the right side of not feeling arbitrary. You get a feeling like you don't understand why that's happening, but you get the sense that there is a reason
Mhm.
why it's happening. It's just not a human like reason
Yeah.
that we would easily understand.
Mhm.
I wonder why, like, the hotel doesn't want Dick Halloran instead of Danny when Dick is there throughout the season, and he's like, the hotel is just like, ooh, now there's a child I can have instead of this old man who also has The Shining. I think about that a lot, where like Dick is not as affected and doesn't. I mean, he sees the stuff and he knows what's going on in the hotel, but it doesn't hurt him the way it hurts Danny in the same way.
That is
That is
answered in the
interesting.
book.
Is it?
Which is basically Danny shines much brighter than Dick.
Brighter, yeah.
Yeah, Danny is.
I knew that he was a
Yeah,
brighter shine, but I
he's a
didn't know
super
if there
battery.
was
hmm And
any
so for
other
Yeah.
Dick,
reason.
And
it is just pictures in a book. They can't actually hurt Dick when it's just him there. You know, he sees something, and the book,
He
in the book,
sees
he goes
them.
into it like he keeps seeing shit there. You know, like it is
Yeah.
definitely a part of his life that he sees ghosts all the time there, and but they can't do anything. But then when
Got
Danny
it.
gets there,
They're
he's
like, ooh,
just
we
like,
have power.
yeah, they're feeding off of just him being there, and that's
it.
why it kind of goes out of its way to be like, that kid's gonna be ours. You know, this is again the Overlook having intentionality again.
And a personality,
Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing I love about this movie is how it is really like the ideal form of two very separate types of horror movies, where it does the haunting stuff like as well as any movie I've ever seen, where all the subtle psychological creepiness and just bad vibes that so many movies have tried to imitate, and yet it also lets loose with the absolute visceral, like axe swinging gonzo terror stuff in the end. That it
Mhm.
become a slasher like as intense as anything this side of Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
It doesn't skimp on either end. You don't feel robbed by by the subtle slow burn aspects, because man, it does burn very brightly by the end.
And I think that's why you need the Nicholson and Duvall performances to be quote unquote broad, to be so large and seismic, that they can kind of I mean, they're great actors, so it's it's attached to something, but it's also big. There's so many memorable line readings in this thing, like all timers, and those are serving both ends in some way, but especially the big one, the crazy axe swing ending of this. Um, there's a lot made of the geography in this place and the way the Overlook doesn't work as a actual physical location. You know how there shouldn't be windows in this room. Each room has its own kind of different dimensionality. They should not fit together.
Hmm.
And part of this
And
is in that 237 documentary. That's a big part of it.
it is, but I wonder like how much of that was really thought out by Kubrick, and how much is just that if you break down most movies,
Yes,
the geography probably doesn't line up that well,
Right,
because
right.
they're just trying to shoot scene to scene and don't really care.
I think so
don't
too.
really care about
I think they built a set that worked
Mhm.
for their purposes. It's just
Yep.
to shoot. Okay, well, if we turn this corner, yeah, the kitchen's there. That wouldn't be where it normally is, but we're building this in Elstree Studios, the studio where they shot Star Wars,
Mhm.
and we want to, make it work for our purposes. And so that's why I think it's like that. I think people give it a
Right.
lot of credit, and I think that most of the stuff in 237, it's such a provocative, compelling movie that of course you're kind of going to be like looking for themes and ideas. And is this about the Native American genocide? Is this about the fake moon landing? And I don't think it is. I think it is about the things it's literally about quite well. I mean, I think that is what
Yeah.
it has on its mind, the sort of the psychology of Jack Torrance and the sort of the technical ghost story that is going on, the incredibly well staged and realized haunting. Those are the main things, what the same stuff the book's about. That's the other thing. I actually don't think this is that different from the book. I think that as far as adaptation goes, like obviously the Torrance character, different take on him, different. They see him differently,
Sure.
but I think this is solid as an adaptation. I think that the version of Jack that is in the movie comes from the book. Like it is a version of that.
I would agree with you to the extent that it doesn't strike me as an especially unfaithful adaptation by the standards of like I don't know, 2005 or so, when we've started
Right.
to like fandom has really taken over post internet to the where fidelity to the source material has become a much
It's
bigger
not
deal.
Harry Potter where you
Yeah.
you have to have Ginny. You have like all that stuff. You can't.
But
It was not a fan base clamoring for,
yeah,
blowjob dog has to be in there. It wasn't.
exactly.
Yeah, like
There are hedge animal fanboys
like
out there just like getting angry that they cut
I
the
mean,
squid out of Watchmen.
I'm a pretty big hedge animal fanboy personally. But I am disappointed that like the Overlook still stood at the end. I wish it had been gone like it is in the book.
Oh, but that last push in on the photograph is still
It's
like
so good.
fucking me
It
up
is
from when I was 10.
right. The last push in is so good because you're like, oh, he's there forever.
Yeah.
But I loved the tension that existed with the boiler, like the boiler about to blow. That tension just wasn't in the movie in the same way. That like it was visceral tension of like, oh, something like big burning blowing up is gonna happen, rather than someone's gonna die. It was like everything's gonna go up in flames, and that just didn't exist in the movie in the same way.
But I feel like that would almost come off as, I mean, it's a boiler, I guess this is sort of appropriate, but as a pressure release valve of like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
there, okay, there's a way out of here. The hotel's the problem. The hotel's going to blow up though. So
Yeah.
we have to just survive to that point. And that's what's great about this too, is, Kubrick really leaving it all on the field here, like going all in on this premise, because you can imagine very easily the like more elevated modern day, like the A24 version of this, where that leaves it up to the interpretation of the viewer as whether the ghosts are actually real or Jack is just going crazy with his own, struggles with alcoholism or
Thank
whatever.
God it's not that. There's ghosts.
Like Kubrick just says, yes, Jack is going crazy on his own. Also, yes, the ghosts are real. Yes, they're trying to kill everyone. And it's so intense and so scary because, yes, all of these things are true and they're all bad. And there's no obvious escape until that snowcat gets there, I guess.
That's the thing. For me, I like that the Overlook in the film is just this sort of edifice of evil that is not going anywhere. There's no defeating the Overlook. It is a force of nature, and we don't know its ways. We don't know its personality. It's just, you have to survive it. That is your victory. If you can survive it, you win. That's all.
Am I imagining that in the book, in the last moment, Jack lets the boiler explode?
Yes, I think he does.
Yeah. There is a sense of like redemption for him that doesn't happen in the movie that I kind of like a lot personally. I kind of like it.
I like that he has none in the movie.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
It's a very different take on the character, though. It's a more tragic figure, and he does get, he manages to go out blowing a place up, at least.
I think what it is
himself.
Like in the book, the Overlook has completely taken over him at the end, and he crushes his own face with the croquet mallet.
That is something I wish they had kept in, where he's just standing in front of Danny, like beating his. That would have been
that's
intense.
That's what's cool about a croquet mallet, I guess, is you can do that.
Beat your face in with it.
And the idea being that Jack has lost a battle with the hotel for possession of his body, that, and the hotel is crushing the face to kind of completely dehumanize him in front of Danny. And this is all very like plot structurally, and then I believe the way that Jack's redemption, such as it is, works is he fights back control for one moment and tells his son, like, get out of here, run away, that kind of thing. And then he goes, like, the hotel takes over and tries to go and fix the boiler from erupting. And that is, that is structured in a way that the movie is just like, he just sort of, no, he just goes nuts and chases them and basically wanders around outside, and he's too crazy to figure out the maze, so he dies. And,
yes. Get that incredible shot of him just frozen there. That is, again, sort of scary. It's sort of scary and also kind of funny at the same time.
Yeah. There is this, in the book, there is a moment where they stop calling him Jack and start calling him It, which I think is like chef's kiss. so good. And you can see that moment. I think it happens in the love of my life scene, is when that switch happens for me when I watch the movie, is like, oh, he is no longer Jack. He is like this thing that the hotel controls.
He's full gone at that point for sure, but I think it's still Jack at that point.
Yeah, because
Really? Yeah.
it still has to manipulate him as Jack in the freezer scene. You know, like that.
Oh,
talk to
true.
him
It does
about
have
his
to manipulate him.
family.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean that he doesn't like lose it for a bit there and then gets knocked
Yeah.
out and comes to with,
Mhm.
you know, a little more control over himself. But yeah, I mean, just becoming more and more unhinged as it goes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing though, that he goes crazy rather than fully possessed. Though I think
Yeah.
crazy
Mhm.
is a bit scarier than the full blown
And
possession angle.
possessed. Yeah.
It certainly matches Kubrick's idea of the character, you know, that he is more culpable, that he is, you know, he's created this himself, and this is a reflection of what he is inside more. And that's, I think that if you get right down to it, that is why I prefer the book, or the movie, excuse me, why I prefer the movie, as good as the book is. It feels a little bit more horror to me. You know, even as the book has incredible horror sequences that do not make it into the movie. There's some great stuff in the book. You know, Kubrick is not interested in Danny. Danny is a great character in the book. That if there's a flaw in the film, my favorite movie ever, as I've said, it's that Kubrick doesn't give a shit about Danny Torrance. It's not
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if well, as a character, as a person, maybe not, but
He likes him as a plot device for sure.
And obviously, you know, there's the twins. You know, there's the scene with the trike and the twins, and there's a few things like that are indelible all-time horror movie moments. You know, that will resonate with me forever. But yeah, I don't think he actually is particularly interested in, like, oh, I don't know what happens to Danny after this. You know, like, or how he handles all this, or what he's feeling about these things. Like he's a kid, so he's kind of beneath Kubrick's notice.
He's feeling scared. That's what matters, is when he's feeling scared. I don't know, but one thing I really like about the movie's portrayal of how the hotel manipulates Jack is how it sort of plays into his resentments and, you know, the whole toxic masculinity, male ego thing, of where it's sort of gassing him up and telling him how he's the important one that's supposed to be the caretaker and do all this stuff. But we kind of know that really it's just using him to get to Danny. That the hotel is more interested in the kid, but
it accurately reads.
It's
him,
flattering.
Yeah.
It's flattering his like, you know, wounded egos, and I don't know, just a really interesting way, the way that it portrays those male resentments and how blind he is to that.
I read something very interesting about this as we were building up to this. Apparently, Vince Gilligan considers this a huge influence on Breaking Bad.
Interesting.
I can see that.
Yeah. I
mean, he breaks pretty hard, pretty bad.
Yeah. But when you mentioned that, I thought of that scene of Gus Fring making his pitch to Walt.
That's right.
A man provides. You know, that's right out of this.
And certainly the resentment of the family.
Yeah.
Angle on feeling bad. Like, I mean, that's sort of, I guess, why it works on Jack so well, is that he kind of holds his own son in contempt. So he doesn't certainly cotton on to the fact that the hotel wants it, like, values it over him.
Yeah.
And there's, like, Walter certainly like, there's definitely a little bit of the Jack and Wendy thing between Walt and Skyler in that show, that he, I mean, hell, do they have the backstory I was attributing to Jack and Wendy, where she was a student of his, that they got married because she got knocked up? I think that is their backstory.
I think it is. I think so, yeah. And it's also got, you know, there's a lot of scenes that you could kind of pour it over, actually, now that I'm thinking. That's kind of crazy. And it's the pride thing. I love the language he's using in that scene with the bat. Is so just like, you know, all that stuff about like his responsibility to his employer. I have signed a contract. All that stuff. It's about responsibility, and he's like missing all his actual responsibilities talking about this, because he's got kind of a framework in his mind about what he is supposed to be, or how he wants people to see him. Maybe. You see, this is the thing. I think this is a very, very good portrayal of a guy. I think that this Nicholson performance actually is really keyed in, despite all the crazy stuff and the theatricality.
Despite that one scene, it's great. Another subtle thing I love about this movie is the sort of like chirons, the like temporal placement like cards that come up, and it's like 2 months later, and then it's just like switches halfway through the movie to just being like Tuesday,
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
And there's one where it's just like it just says Thursday, and it's just that shot of Jack staring out the window looking absolutely insane, just staring. And I want to say that's the only thing that happens on Thursday.
I think it is. Yeah,
and then it just goes to Friday or whatever. But I mean, again, there's weird, just very, very dry bits of humor in here. But
oh, it's a hilarious movie. I've seen this way too many times to know if it's scary anymore. But I mean, it is. But like, it's very funny. The Lloyd scene, the gold room scene, is one of my favorite scenes in any movie. It kind of is, a film that is less concerned with addiction than the book version. I think just including that scene, you get it all. You get everything that he's driving after just in one perfect scene that is incredibly performed. And, it incorporates the ghosts and the broken inside of this guy perfectly. It's sort of the signature scene of the film, and everything that comes out of his mind, everything that comes out of his mouth is iconic. Every single best goddamn bartender from Timbuktu to Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine, for that matter. Yeah.
I don't know. There's so many things you could call the signature scene of this. The twins in the hallway and the
bat scene,
Hot Wheel, the bat scene, the axe in the bathroom scene is also the red rum.
Red rum.
Yeah, there's the elevator dripping blood. There's indelible imagery, throughout. We haven't even talked about the old lady corpse in the bathroom. Like that's.
Oh right, darn.
Going back to my weird introduction to this movie, like I think Room 237 was cut entirely because just the nudity aspect of it, and I was watching it on cable TV, or actually not even cable, just on Fox, I think. But the other thing is, I didn't realize until 15 years later that they show the elevator full of blood right at the start of this movie.
Yeah,
when I was watching this the first time, she just turns a corner, all of a sudden, elevator of blood, gush, like pouring down the hall, tsunami of blood. I'm just, what on earth? Like, part of my little child brain thinks that if I had seen the first part of this movie, all this might make sense. But then part of me is like, but it also couldn't. Like, there's no blowjob dog couldn't have a backstory that would have made sense to 10-year-old me,
Well, that elevator blood is interesting because it is metaphorical in every way. That never literally happened. that is just like, this is what you're up for, Danny. That's his vision of it. That's why it's so odd.
But then Wendy's the one
to see Wendy see it at the end. Like what does that mean? There's a lot of things like that where you're just like, wait a minute, what are we talking about here?
We don't know beyond just the power of the hotel was like crescendoing somehow, that it's getting more like where Wendy's starting to see things where it was Danny at first, and then got a bigger grip on Jack, and it's really growing.
Oh, it's spectacular. Have you all seen the 237 documentary?
Yes.
Fascinating thing, the way people obsess about this movie. I mean, I God knows I understand it. There's a thing in that movie, and I was fascinated by this, and I read up about it afterwards, and everything I've read was like, yeah, it's actually super cool, which is they have screenings of this movie where they show it backwards and forwards at the same time. So they're showing the movie, and they've superimposed the movie playing backwards over the top of it. So you're seeing the end of the movie in reverse while you're watching the beginning, and I'm just like, that doesn't seem like it would be good at all. But
no, it sounds like it would be awful.
But I've read people who've seen it, and they're just like, it's one of the most incredible experiences I've had in a movie theater. And I'm trying
I mean, you couldn't possibly design a movie to be played that way.
No, of course, no. It's like
they didn't do this because Kubrick suggested it.
It's like the Wizard of Oz.
Pink
Floyd thing. It's that can't make sense. It can't. But then it's this movie.
I could see Pink Floyd designing their thing after the fact around this existing artifact, but I don't know how you design the thing itself to run two ways, and like how you expect anybody to do that. I mean,
what is the purpose?
Like I said, to what end? I don't get it. Like, I mean, that the whole Route 237 thing, like, it is interesting for sure. And I was struck actually, that I don't think this movie is about the Native American genocide exactly either, but I was struck watching it this time. There's a lot more Native American like imagery than I remembered there being.
Yeah.
There is.
Is there? I mean, my best guess though is that doesn't go much further to Kubrick than he wanted to tie this as to like a greater, like longer history of evil that the Overlook, has goes back, and being in Colorado, doesn't have a lot of like non-Native American history that stretches back that far past 1900. So he's just sort of connecting it to the older, to the land going backwards. And I don't think it's really a more involved thesis about, saying something specific about the genocide of the Native Americans.
Right. I don't either. But I mean, it's clearly there. I don't know. To some extent, maybe it's just like that, well, it was built on a Native American burial ground is just a hoary old chestnut of horror. It's poltergeist. It's, it's what you say when it's scary. I forget the stand-up comedian who says, well, isn't America just an Indian burial ground?
Yeah, no, I mean, and that is what I think that's what it is because when you want to do something, I mean, when old and creepy and America doesn't have that much history compared to, old Europe or whatever, where you could have a medieval ghost haunting a castle. But we didn't have castles around here. We didn't have, in most of these states, we didn't have any, but we didn't have much edifices, of white American civilization prior to 1900. So, I mean, so you kind of run back into Native American burial grounds very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the. I mean, King has explicitly gone into that. I think Pet Sematary is kind of like the sour ground of the graveyard. That sort of thing is a more direct attempt to take that on. I don't even think that's backstory in the book. I feel like that's a Kubrick addition, which I think is what gives credence to the theory. But like, still, I don't think. I don't know. I like that. There's that take though. I mean, this is a movie I can endlessly listen to takes on. That's why that movie is so interesting. Is there's so much compelling kind of elliptical stuff in here where you're just like, why is Jack reading a Playgirl magazine in the lobby? Little things like that don't necessarily make sense. It's fascinating, and some of it's just hilarious. Like there's that one that was like, I didn't really like this movie until I saw the picture of the Minotaur in the background, and and you see it's a picture of somebody on skis. It's
yes,
stuff like that.
But she's got a whole Minotaur theory. It's wonderful,
and it invites that more than other movies because it just demands your attention and is captivating
and refuses to explain itself. It ends on the most ambiguous note of like, wait, what now? What on earth does it mean if he's in the picture now?
Let's talk about that. Is there an answer to that? Is the photograph mean anything in the long run? Is it for me? I've just been like, well, he's absorbed in the hotel. I don't really need to know how that works.
No, I mean, any explanation would diminish it.
I've read some online. I've read some people's theories. Like, actually, there were two Jacks, you see, and that's why he's always been there. This is a new reincarnation version of the guy who died. It's like, what? What are we talking about?
I love
that's why there's Charles Grady and Delbert Grady. They're two different guys. That's how the hotel works. It's and
that's a great touch, by the way. The fact that they call that Grady by two different names, like that it's messing with him losing his identity in the hotel in some non-specific way that we can't quite nail down. I like the conviction of the person who's like, well, no, obviously it would be silly to say that he was just absorbed into the hotel and then like backfilled into this photograph. So obviously what it means, we're talking sensibly here, is that there's reincarnated caretakers across time that
and they look the same.
Like that's the sensible explanation.
Well, the crux of it is that that one line, "You've always been the caretaker here." Like
You've always been the caretaker.
Does that mean anything contextually? Not. I mean,
it's very unsettling in the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is a sense of like this was his fate from the get-go. Always. That's what I get from it. Is that like his fate has always been to come to the Overlook and be the caretaker, and that's the end of it.
That's creepy. That's creepy in its own kind of way. Like, this is always where you were headed.
Yeah.
And it's preying on too his feelings that he was not meant to have this family. That they bushwhacked him.
They're in his way.
And tied him down. He had some grander, destiny
to be the caretaker.
It doesn't seem that grand to be the caretaker of a hotel, but he had a connection to a higher power. That I guess that's like sort of a a writing metaphor of some sort.
That's
yeah,
that's
it's
interesting. That's also
playing
like
off
that's AA language too. Interestingly,
Oh yeah, that's true.
yeah. I don't know if that means anything.
Yeah. Good movie, man. It's got layers.
Got layers.
Yeah,
We haven't even talked about the moon landing, but
that one's just nuts, right? That one's just that one's just somebody being goofy, isn't it? I mean, it's just an endlessly entertaining film too. Is the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've seen this, but enough to know it down. I got the geography of the place figured out now.
You know why there are windows. You know why.
Yeah. And it is kind of at the point where, like, if I see a shot from this used in another movie, I'm like, shining shot,
Yeah, same.
like,
Yeah.
and it's not just the big ones. It's like, half the film is iconic shots for me now, that low angle of him in the food pantry, holding onto that weird lock, Wendy, don't forget the whole thing, that stuff. It's always just there in my head. And I see a lot of movies where I'm just like, hey, shining shot. Yeah.
he pulls his head up off the bar, and it's suddenly lit up. I love that one.
Oh boy, that scene.
Oh boy.
All right, but we're just naming shots now. Let's Bowie, thank you for joining us on this.
Course.
Do you have any final shining thoughts that you want to leave us with?
Oh God, that feels like a lot of pressure. No, just that like this movie has, for me at least, influenced the watching of literally every other movie I've watched since I've seen it. And I can't imagine I can't imagine what movies would look like to me if I hadn't seen this movie. Like what you said, John, every time I see a shot from this movie, I'm like, that's The Shining. And it's in so many things, and it just permeates my existence in a way that no other like piece of media ever has, Yeah.
It's like it's always been a part of you.
It's like I've always been here, and it's always been there, and I've always been the caretaker. That's what it was.
Yeah, I tell you, it's I'm right there with you. I mean, like honestly, it's silly. I mean, it is a movie about a frustrated writer who ends up running a hotel to take care of his wife and small child. So yes, I do identify with it.
I totally blanked on the fact that you work at a hotel throughout.
Yeah,
all of this.
same.
Oh yeah, big time. But no, it's just one of those films that I'm never gonna get tired of. Odd for a 2.5 hour terrifying horror film about familial abuse. But yeah, it's everything. It's the best King adaptation. It's the one he hates, but it somehow captures like his voice better than the ones he loves. I think that's kind of awesome. It's my favorite Kubrick movie. It's my favorite movie. It's my favorite movie. So
best Stephen King thing, best Kubrick thing, best
thing,
ghost story, one of the best slashers. Probably best Nicholson performance.
A movie I'll be reckoning with the rest of my life. I think. It's just that good and that powerful. Love it. All right, thank you, Bowie. I'm thrilled we got the chance to talk about this finally, and yeah. I don't know. Did you have last thoughts on The Shining, Elle?
No, I can't top what you guys did. Just, I mean, what I was saying, just best everything. One of the best movies about alcohol. Best thing about addiction. Best thing about writing. Best whatever. The thing we never remember to do. Please rate and review our show on whatever you're listening to it on.
Yes, that helps the show.
Please and thank you.
People listen to it more. They tell me if there's more engagement. Yes, thank you.
You just press the stars. It's one tap of your finger. It's fine. It won't hurt you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Bowie. Thank you, everybody. And that's it. We're out.